Nakeia, how are you? Thank you so much for being here today in the TC office. It's so great to meet you finally.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
How is your mind? How's New York treating you? Where are you right now in everything in your world? There's a lot going on right now. Big book drop. I want to hear how you're feeling.
I'm good. When you say how is your mind, I'm like, my mind is good. It's clear, it's renewed. It's better than ever. I'm excited to be here. Although I live in the South, I am a Northerner for sure.
Yes, because you're from Jersey, right?
Yes,
yeah, tell me about that. Being here now, does it feel like a home away from home still, or you feel like your roots are now in the South?
What's funny is I live in the South, but I also still live up north. So like hair, major nail things, I still come up home to do that.
The best stuff's up here. It's hard to beat it.
I try to travel every few months, so I come, but I'm also really rooted in the South. I raised my family there, and so I love it there, so I'm good with both.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, is there anything in New York that you're like, I have to hit while I'm here?
I love the views. I love the lights. I live in the country, so there are no views or lights, so I was looking forward to that.
Small dose of the city, just to kind of bring you back to,
And walking in the city, I miss that. No one walks where I'm from. We're driving. There's no public transportation.
And we're one of the only cities I feel like that really embraces walking no matter where you go. LA, they're like, walking, never heard of her. You go anywhere else, it's like Ubers everywhere, but I'm so happy you get to enjoy it. Beautiful weather for you too. I think you brought the warmth here, so we needed it.
I bring it wherever I go.
We really needed it, seriously. Well, I want to start and just say, like, as someone that's read your book, All the Right Pieces, and it is all of the right pieces, may I say, I am so inspired by your work. I can't wait to dive into it, but I really want to start from where you began in your career, because when I look at you, I look at someone that's a healer, a self-care advocate, just a wellness advocate. All of your work is every part of your work, it's so prevalent that you care about others, but that starts with caring about yourself. So I guess I want to go back a little bit. Where did you begin in this journey? Who was Nakeia growing up?
Little Nakeia is still here. So what you see is a version of that for sure. I grew up in Jersey. I am the product of two teenage parents. So my mom was 15, my dad was 16, 17-ish. Our birthdays are really close together. And so it was a gift being raised by my grandmother, but around my parents. I mean, how much of a parent can you really be, at 15 or 16? So my paternal grandmother raised me in Jersey in the projects. Wow. In the home with my dad. It was my paternal grandmother. She fostered me, literally brought me home from the hospital. But those types of circumstances create opportunities. So, grew up a little fast. A little soon, sooner than others, being on my own, a latchkey kid, doing all those things. So that's why I say there's a version of, Nakeia here, because I was growing into her relatively quickly. I've been writing in my journals forever. I have journals that date back to like 13 or 14 years old.
That's the best, to be able to have those and look back to. I'm a big journaler too.
Are you?
Yeah, of course.
My grandmother passed away in 2020. So cleaning out her home, I was able to find some of my old writings. I have all of my old journals, and just reading what I was saying back then, I was just as deep as I am now as a kid. I was looking at some of the things I'm writing, I'm like, really? Like, you were thinking about that as a child? So as far as writing in journals and reflecting in that way, I've always done that. But writing professionally is something that I didn't see coming.
Yeah, did you think that was in the cards for you at all? Also, I'm sure you're, from the jump, if you're journaling that young, you're able to at least express yourself in a way that a lot of people don't. As you know, a lot of people are not willing to do the work, if you will. I'm sure that really opened up probably a whole other side of things that maybe even you forgot about too, seeing all of that. Like, do you think there was foreshadowing in that writing?
Yeah, very poetic. Like, very poetic. And I'm like, where did this come from? I guess I was just born with it. 100%. Like, I'm the person who's like, how's your heart? Not just how are you?
I love it.
I sometimes I'm looking at interviews that I've done, or I'm looking or listening to podcasts, and I'm like, I am literally a deep chick, like literally deep. But I wrote deeply even back then. So I did see foreshadowing, which brings me to my book, All the Right Pieces. Like, when I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to self-reflect, but it's really powerful. Research actually shows that self-reflection boosts self-confidence and self-esteem. Just because you're aware of yourself, you're reflecting on what's going on. And so I don't know if you ever look back at some of the things that you write and you either see something and it's really good and you're like, wow, that was good. Or you see something and you're like, that was a mess. Either way.
I've seen it all, trust, in my writing, yes.
Either way, when you look at yourself now, you have something to look back on. 100%. And I love being able to look back on something.
Oh, yeah. No, and I think that's the thing, too. Once you dive into the work, it's sometimes hard to get crack that surface and be like, all right, let's unpack it all. But it's so, yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's something I'm grateful for doing, and also grateful for your work because, especially in reading your book, and we'll get more into it, I felt like it was such a self-reflection, but I saw myself in you as the writer, and some of it's third person, you're like, all of these, it feels very affirmative, but I just loved how you really were so vulnerable in that, because I think that's also why people connect to your work so much, And that kind of ties me to, asking, where is Nakeia now? And I can already tell you're a big family person, hearing your origin story. How are you now with all of these things now? Your career has unfolded. It's naturally brought in a side of you that's always been there. Mm-hmm. How do you feel in your path now?
I feel good. I feel, and I've always felt that everything that happens in life, everything that we experience, whether it is like me being the product of a difficult childhood, circumstances that are not necessarily ideal, or coming from the most beautiful home with the most beautiful things in the suburbs. Either way, having, like I just said, something to look back on, and having a path that you can look back on and see pieces of yourself, this version of you, reflected there, or to even be surprised that you got here based on some of the things that you've done. I love that. So Nakeia now is someone that's just happy that, happy I'm here, happy that I continue to follow the path, grateful for the messy Nakeia, Nakeia from the projects, Nakeia the graduate, the college graduate, the business owner, the counselor. I'm grateful for it all.
I'm grateful too, because I don't know if you didn't follow that path, if I would ever get to hear your words the way I have now. And all of the work you do, to me, it's so full-bodied, and it expresses every side of you. There's a side that's your direct story, which we see in your writing and on your social media, but also the work you do one-on-one with people. You have this community. Tell me about that too. How did it evolve? Did it start with community type of work for you online, or when did social media even begin? When was that a part of your career or part of your life as a whole? Because as we know, it becomes ingrained in your life. It starts to become subconscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, social media is something I just couldn't avoid. Yeah. It's not something that I was excited to do. I was like, okay, I guess I gotta get into this whole social media thing.
Here it goes.
I was sending out emails to friends, just things I was thinking about. Told you I'm a little deep. And she's like, you need to create a blog around this. Turn these emails into a blog. And she literally, her name's Serena, amazing, I love her. She put a website together for me.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's wonderful.
Literally here's your .com, go write.
What a wonderful friend, that's amazing.
And I was writing there daily. I was posting every single day. And then social media hit, and I avoided Instagram. I was on Facebook for high school reunions and things of that nature. Right. But they started sharing my work. And so as they would share my work and tag me, then I was like, well, let me put myself out there. I was still a private account on Instagram until 2017 or 2018.
That's a huge floodgate opening, right? Yeah, because I'm sure too, boundary-wise, once the whole internet can see what's going on, there's a self-awareness around that, but also I'm sure personally, you have to decide what you're willing to share and what you're not willing to share. Was it always poetry focused though when you went public? Did you know that was where you were going with it?
No. And although my work is really poetic, I don't necessarily see it all as poetry.
Yeah. Tell me about that. So where does it fall in your brain? Or is there an umbrella for it that you like to see it under?
It's poetry. I mean, when you think about it, some of the things I write.
I find it super poetic.
But it's also very much prose, where I'm just giving some thoughts and some messages that are just on my heart. Although I take a very personal approach to what I write, not all of it is rooted in personal stories of my own or personal experiences of my own. Sometimes it's a client, sometimes it's my siblings, sometimes it's a friend. So yeah, it's poetic, it's prose, it's messages. Barb from Peaceful Mind, Peaceful Life a few years ago. She was like, these are pep talks you didn't think you needed.
Oh, I love that. That's exactly how I see your work.
I took that from her and I use it. So possibly a pep talk you didn't know you needed.
Oh my God. And I wonder too if some of these are just downloads, like things that you just, like, do you just feel this intuition to say something and then put it out in the world? Because all the feedback I see on your platform is just like, thank you for this, thank you for this, thank you for this. You know, people really resonate with that. Does that affirm those feelings you have to even put it out to begin with?
It's very affirming. I'm an intuitive writer. I don't batch create. I don't write the night or second before. Like when I want to post, I sit with my phone, I create something, and then I post it. Same thing with writing books, same thing with writing articles that I've done in the past. Very intuitive. So it's confirming, and affirming. When someone says, this is what I needed, this is speaking directly to me. Sometimes I'm like, this speaks to me when I read it back.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Was it always easy to tap into the intuition for you creatively?
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. And I'm wondering too, this kind of reminds me of like law of attraction and manifestation. Has that ever been something that's a part of your life? Because I can see you as like a byproduct of the universe just being like, yes, 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 I want to see you win, you know? Yeah. Everything you do is just so positive. I can't help but think you bring in positivity just by being that positive.
Thank you for saying that. I love the topic of manifestation and law of attraction in the industry, personal development and wellness. But if I'm going to be honest, what I do and what I share is rooted in purpose for me. I have this theory that our ultimate purpose is to become the best versions of ourselves. And so as you are becoming whomever it is, during whatever season you're in at whatever time, when you focus on becoming a better version of you, ultimately you manifest things. Ultimately you attract things. And so rather than focusing on getting or manifesting or attracting, I focus on who I want to be in this season of my life. What do I need in this season of my life? Who am I? Where do I want to go? What do I want to feel? And those things help me to manifest. So I can't give you the manifestation plan. And I see it a lot differently too, because back to my theory on purpose, becoming the best version of yourself, as you say, what do I need? As you say, who am I? You are also accessing gifts and talents and abilities just by doing and being. When we go back to being on social media, I was just writing an email to friends, and then my friend put my website up, you know?
That feels so serendipitous. Like that can't just be a coincidence, right? Like that feels like a message in a way. Like it was time for you to step into that like public sector and start sharing more personally.
Same with copywriting. So I was writing copies for some of your favorite influencers as a ghostwriter. They just came in my DMs and was like, I love what you write. Do you do this for others? And so I'm like, sure.
Yeah, that feels like such a pivot, but like, I'm sure also feels good to know someone's like, I really love what you do, and I just wish I could embody what you embody. Like, did that feel natural to you to like be a part of those, you know, conversations that other people were trying to have?
It did, because it was more of my work of teaching other people to identify who they are. So in order for me to write for you and your brand, I have to have a conversation about who you are, the identity of your brand, what your message is, what your purpose is, right? And so people were like, wow, I didn't think about this. This session before, you know, hiring you helped me to really be clear on what I want to do and how I want to show up. So even though it was work that they, you know, called on me to do for their brand, it was rooted in my work in the world.
That's so cool, because I think, you know, if you told me off the bat, I'm a ghostwriter, right? Which is also just this funny term that we see thrown around a lot when it comes to just, you know, writing in general. I would immediately assume it's somebody that's not willing to do the work, you know, behind it. And then you get brought in to do it. But to see that you're inspiring people to actually just identify, it just goes back to this like, you know, you're such a coaching energy, and not in a way where you're like blowing a whistle and telling someone what to do, but like you're really guiding someone towards like their ultimate purpose as well. I just feel like it just all comes together and makes so much sense. And as a reader and fan of yours, you know, it's really cool to see that you've been able to like put that on paper in such a way. In this book process too, I'd love to talk to you about Where did this process begin for you? Or when did you know you wanted to put it out into the world?
So when I was approached to do this project, I was like, heck yeah, you know? And then I went to my work and I'm like, well, what would I want to do with them? And I feel like when I submitted my manuscript the first time, the feedback that I got was so aligned with what I wanted to put out in the world. And we workshopped the title, All the Right Pieces. And I was just like, yes. And everything has just been like, yes. But honestly, the book was separate. It was 3 separate books.
Really?
Yeah. I started just writing and putting together one, and then I put that aside, and then I put together part 2, and then I put that aside. But when I read it together, it just really made sense. It was literally one piece after the other being put together to create this whole vibe of owning every piece of yourself. Yeah, and I read it back during the editing phase, and I was just like, this is good.
You did that. I gotta say, you did
Yeah,
that.
I was looking, I'm like, this is 16-year-old Nakeia needed to hear. This is what 18-year-old Nakeia was doing. This is why 25-year-old Nakeia did whatever she did, and it just all makes sense. So I'm excited for readers to take the poems, the prose, the pep talks, and hopefully go back in their lives and see pieces of them and to start really weaving together all that they are. We try to, kill our old selves. We're ashamed of our old selves. I'm good with messy Nakeia, right? I'm good with the Nakeia that wasn't quite as confident. I'm real good with projects. Nakeia, the Nakeia from the projects. I remember sitting on the 3 steps that led up to my apartment and just dreaming up a life that I now live. I couldn't see this for myself, but I saw something. But that version of me was the dreamer. And so when I do things like this and write a second book and hope someone loves it, it's because she's still here dreaming in me. So I'm glad that you got that from reading the book.
Oh, I did. And, like you were saying, like the pieces that you put together to create this, this cohesive message, like, I don't know, even though like you said, it was like supposed to be 3 different books, I see what you saw in it as like one. And I don't think if you separated it, you'd be able to understand it that way, Like I'd see it for what it is and like it's still be amazing work regardless, but I just love that you did that. And it makes me want to touch on a quote, if you don't mind, from your book. It's from the earlier portion of it. You wrote, "She made peace with the pain that grew her up." And already talking to you, I feel like I'm hearing what you could be referring to, or just the, as we all grow, we experience pain, but I guess like there's so much weight to what you said there, like I read that over and over and over again and I'm just like, yes, that's what it is. Was it always easy for you to do that, to see it for what it was? Or were you always someone that could go back and look and say, yeah, it happened and it's okay and I'm better for it and I'm who I am because of it? Was that an easy reflection to make?
It is easy now. And it's a reflection that I actually came to full circle and in its fullness rather, later on in life, looking back and seeing that things made sense. But when you're in the middle of what I call your struggle season, right?
Struggle season, been there, done that.
Yeah, and we have them and then we'll have them again, where you're struggling to put yourself together, when you're struggling to build your life, when you're struggling to forge a path for your career. It doesn't seem like it's gonna make sense. And then you get there and you're like, this is why. This is why I moved to this city. This is why this friendship ended, or this is why. You won't see it until later. Yeah. And so I write for the person that you are now, for the person you used to be, but also for the person you will be. So my hope is if you're in your struggle season, that you'll take hold to those words, right, as a moment of reflection in the future. If I keep going, I'll get to the point that I can look back here. Take, for instance, 2020, right? One of the worst years of all of our lives. Globally, the whole world was in a struggle season. Oh, yeah. That was a year I lost my grandmother, the woman who raised me, right before the pandemic. What's crazy about the story is that I went to her funeral. On the drive back, all of the restaurants were closing. and we were in the middle of, grief. And so we didn't even realize that this was going on. If we had buried her like a few days later, we wouldn't have been able to have like a open funeral and see her. It was right before everything shut down. And then 3 months later, I lost my dad, her son. So in that year, I lost two of the most important people in my life. And it was really just going downhill from there. The world was shutting down. People were getting sick. I was losing, friends I went to high school with and college with. And I said, this is going to be the worst year of my life, right? During the middle of the struggle, this is what I felt. I was like, I can't go out like that. My grandmom didn't raise me like that. 2020 taught me that I ain't no punk. That's when Nakeia from the projects kind of came out and was like, what can we do to flip this year? I self-published my first book. So the pain that I was going through, I would wake up in the middle of the night, seeing my grandmother's face, couldn't go back to sleep, so I would write. And then the person that I would call to cry about my grandmother, her son, my dad, was gone, so then I would write again. And then I put that book out. And so instead of it being just the worst year of my life, it was the year I became a published author. It was the year that my social media blew up and then people saw me. It was the year that Brianna hopped in my DMs, one of my most favorite writers, and said, come over to Thought Catalog. The worst of times, if you allow it, can also be some of the best things that happen to you. I wouldn't be a writer if they didn't leave. When my grandmother left, I had to really grow up. I had to really support myself. When my dad left, 3 months later, I really had to grow up again. And this book grew me up. Wow. And then writing All the Right Pieces continued to grow me up even more.
Was it hard to come to that realization that like you don't have it in you to give up? Like what pushed you to like, move past that or like almost break through that wall that felt like the end? Because to me, that feels like you're watching your world just, I don't know, like with the foundation of who you are, these people that are so pivotal, like when they leave, you're left with you. And what made you realize that you have what it takes to move through it?
I think that we all kind of have this space in us that we can tap into if we want to, but life kind of happens and we forget that we have that space, right? When we're young, there's very few fears. I don't know about you, but flipping and jumping and running and falling and getting back up is something that we do innately. Yeah. It's not until you look at the child and go, oh, when they fall, that they then begin to cry, right? Or that they then begin to feel it. And so just going back to those spaces within in myself that we all have, and just saying, one of the things that I wrote years ago, I said, remember the last time you thought you couldn't do it, but then you did, do that again, right? And so talking about all the pieces, all the experiences, all of the times, we've been hurt before, right? You've had your heart broken before. You've been disappointed before. You've heard no before. What did you do then? Do that again. Do it again. Do that again. And so that's pretty much what I do. I go back in my own record. I say, I tell people, check your record. Yeah. I check my record. And sometimes I write it down. When there are moments when I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. When I work with clients and they're like, I don't know if this is for me. I go, well, when was the last time you felt like it wasn't for you? Let's talk about that. Yeah. And then we write it down. This happened. You didn't think you were going to do it, but you did. And then you just keep going. And it's like your list of accomplishments, your list of times that you got back up. Just get back up again. But I'm not gonna lie, getting back up is difficult.
It's hard. Do you ever have to look at your own work even and remind yourself, like through your writing? Like, do you ever read back at your writing and say, like, she clearly did it then, because look at the piece, it's out in the world and people connected with it. Like, does your work motivate you as much as it motivates at least me?
It does, and I appreciate you for saying that. But every time someone shares something of mine or they tag me, I say, thank you for sending this back my way.
I feel like there's so many parallels between every stage of life, It's almost like we're going through the same circle and it's like over and over again. Like, it's like you're saying, like going back and remembering what you went through to realize how you're gonna get through the now. And I wanna talk about your client work too. I think that's so cool. So tell me a bit more about the work you do with clients and